Okay, Tesla discovers scalar waves. Scalar waves, what the heck are scalar waves? This is the coolest thing of the entire thing, because it turns out that this energy that he discovered is the same thing that we emit from our bodies. Our cells, when they resonate, are producing this energy, and it's the same thing as the energy is produced by the resonation of the earth, the resonation of the stars, the sun, and everything else. So this is really incredible, and we're going to talk about Maxwell here briefly, and he was the one that came up with a lot of the principles involving wavelengths of light, and it will make a little bit more sense. But essentially, we live in a three-dimensional world which the physics call three-space, but there's also space-time, or fourth space, fourth dimension. Essentially what this means is that in the fourth dimension, we know that all energy, or all matter, can be converted into energy, and all energy can be converted into matter. We split the atom, we discovered this. But it also turns out that time itself is actually compressed energy, and it is energy which is compressed by exactly the same factor by which is considered compressed energy, the speed of light squared. So there's your unified field theory. It's not that difficult. So he got a patent in 1901 for this, but of course, obviously, patents come much later than the actual inventions. But it's important that this, when it happened, because a lot of really strange things in the world started happening shortly after he discovered scalar waves. When Tesla was a little boy, one of the first inventions he made was a wheel, a turbine wheel. All it was a wooden disc that he stuck in the river. Unlike a paddle wheel, it was just a disc, and he found that this was a very efficient design, worked really well, and so he was a very prolific designer even as a young boy. This is one of his later inventions, but it's interesting to note because even though he invented this thing way back when, it's considered today one of the most efficient advanced turbine designs still to date. So his basic design has yet to really be improved on. And you'll notice this looks like a stack of hard drives. And there's a reason for that too, because this is a very efficient. The thing is that the RPMs that you can achieve with this kind of design are incredible. And with the alloys and the metal that we have today, they can make these things go at incredible speeds. Nikola Tesla invented the electric. No, he didn't invent the electric car, but there was never a car like this. 1931, Westinghouse, Pierce Arrow got together and they got Tesla to come down. They provided him a car, and what they did was they stuck a Westinghouse motor in there, an 80 horsepower, 1800 RPM electric motor, hooked it up to the clutch. They called Tesla on the day of this big thing. He came down and he went to the local electronics shop and picked up some wires and some tubes and a couple of little gizmos, and he went back and he threw together this little box and stuck it in the glove box, hooked the motor up to it, fired the thing up. There was no battery, nothing. There's two little wires coming out of the box, and you thought, "Whoa, gee, where's the electricity coming from?" Well, needless to say, Tesla had secretly set up one of these wireless transmission towers somewhere nearby, and so this car was sucking the energy right out of the air. No gas, no batteries, nothing. Now, can you imagine? This is the car that he was talking about. This car. You'd never buy gas. Why do we have pollution? Why are we using gas? You know, people think, oh, we got fuel cells and all this stuff. This zero pollution, zero byproduct. My God, I mean, in 1931. Now, of course, Morgan, Rockefeller, Henry Ford, either one had major amounts of money they stood to lose if this happened. So they think, well, what happened? Why didn't we get it? Well, it's 1931. It's Tesla's getting kind of old. Tesla starts to get some recognition. Here he is on the cover of Time magazine. You know, here's a man that we can't even read about him in the school books, and he's a big secret, and yet here he is on, Man of the Year. Doesn't make sense. They wanted to give him the Nobel Prize. They wanted to share with Edison. Tesla said, no way. They gave it to Marconi. All right, 1931, Thomas Alva Edison dies. Tesla's on the cover. He got greetings from FDR, the president, basically sent him a letter and told Tesla how wonderful you are and thank you for everything you've done for the country and all this. Albert Einstein, again, is one of the very famous people that wished him a happy birthday. Tesla's starting to get old. Things are starting to get kind of wild. He liked to be in the front of the media quite a bit. He was still getting media recognition every time. He'd always be saying, oh, I got this new invention, this new this, or this new that. Nobody really paid attention to him. Foreign dignitaries used to visit his little apartment all the time. This is actually his apartment. This was a little tiny little apartment up in New York, and by this time he was pretty broke and poor, but he was still a very famous man. Interesting to note, these gentlemen here, this is prior to World War II, and these gentlemen here are Yugoslavian diplomats and VIPs, and a couple of these guys actually got executed when they returned to Europe. Very unfortunate. Before Tesla died, he became very spiritual, and one of the things he did was he liked to hang out in the park and feed pigeons. He was the pigeon guy. He was the old crazy man feeding the pigeons in the park. People thought he was nuts, but it's a very interesting story for a lot of reasons. When he got too sick and too old to go out there and feed the pigeons, he would ask his secretaries to go down to the bank, get some money, go out and buy the food, and go down the park and feed his pigeons, and make sure to look out for this white one, which was his special favorite. Towards the end there, he actually had these birds flying to his room, and he would be feeding them in his room. If you can imagine, he had all these pigeons and pigeon crap and pigeon food everywhere. It was a really awful, nasty mess, and people thought he was really getting kind of weird by this time. Before he died, his favorite white pigeon came to him, and the pigeon was sick. And this is a very controversial thing, and the only place you're going to hear this story is in the original autobiography by John J. O'Neill. They kind of left this out in the later versions. But when the bird died, it kind of flew to his windowsill and died, and according to Tesla, when the bird died, there was a big emanation of white light that came from this bird. So some people like to say that this was some sort of spiritual experience, but it was almost of a Holy Spirit type thing. You can read into it whatever you want, but according to Tesla, this actually happened. Whoops, wrong button again. Where did the money go? This guy should have been a multi-billionaire, but when he died, he had nothing. And this is important because we're going to get into really, really volatile, controversial stuff really quick. And this is one of the clues about this stuff. It is alleged that his bookkeeper was none other than a guy named George H. Scherf Sr., who was an alleged Nazi. Here he is visiting with the prince. Look at him, he's getting pretty old here, but these, again, Yugoslavian dignitaries. This is the prince of Yugoslavia prior to, and this is probably one of the last pictures that was taken. We're going to talk about Tesla's connection to the CIA and the Nazis and the U.S. government and all that stuff real quick, but this is kind of an interesting little subnote. And again, this is not written in stone. I'm not saying this is true, but it's something to consider. You see that? All right. Tesla dies. For all of you who think that Tesla is not dead, this is a death mask that was taken from his face. And I believe it was his good friend, I can't remember which good friend it was, that asked that it be done. It was probably some Yugoslavian diplomats. Mayor LaGuardia actually did the eulogy. So, you know, New York really celebrated him. He was a favorite son of New York, and he was still considered extremely important. Coffin draped with the American flag and the flag of Yugoslavia. Tesla's ashes, he was cremated, his ashes are inside of this urn, and this is in the Tesla Library, or the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. We're going to talk about that real quick. Tesla's possessions were confiscated by the FBI. Some people say it was the FBI, but it turns out that it was actually the Department of the Navy, and that is probably because that was who he was mainly working with during the Philadelphia experiment and all that. Here's a Tesla file, his FBI file, and if you read that, basically it says, what do we do with his possessions? You know, by the way, he's doing all this secret stuff, so we don't know what we should do with it because this guy's kind of out there, and who knows what we should do. That's his safe. Remember, they were standing there greeting the guys. This is that. There he was. This is where everybody was standing. So this is what was left of his life. Everything crammed in this little tiny room.
Didn't he say he had a ray gun in his safe?
Well, who knows? You'd have to ask the FBI about that.